Hello and welcome back to Module 7, and this is video 3 in our first inquiry question. We're still going on that first outcome and it's quite long, but we're going to keep on persisting and I'm sure you're having some success. What I want to look at today is another group of hydrocarbons, but these have a halogen attached to their hydrocarbon chain, but they're actually called our halogenated organic compounds. Not technically hydrocarbons because our hydrocarbons are only with carbon and hydrogen, but these are ones with a halogen attached. So what does that mean? It's an organic compound that simply has a halogen, one of those group 7 atoms attached to one of the carbon atoms in the molecule. Sometimes they can have more than one. So it could have a chlorine and a fluorine. So depending on what you get is what you've got to deal with. So these haloalkanes have come under quite a bit of fire in recent years because they were used in many refrigerants and firefighting agents and so forth. And they came under fire because some of them, our CFCs, were considered to be dangerous to our environment and had contributed to a hole in the ozone layer. So many of those were then banned, and they've found other ones that perhaps are not quite as damaging, or at least created some regulations around their use. So how are we going to name these? All of these things that we've been looking at so far, we've just been building on. So we are taking dolly steps and just adding. So make sure that you get each one, do plenty of questions, ask plenty of questions before moving to the next one. And each one should only just be a gradual step on what you already know and have had success with. So when we look at naming a hydrocarbon with a halogen attached, again, we keep going back to naming our main chain. Again, including the position of any double or triple bond, and they're always the ones that are given the lowest number first. Once that's determined, that tells us the side that we count in from. The second thing we do is then name and put our position in of our alkyl side chains, again, as what we've just done. And then after we've done that, we look at any halogens that have been added to that hydrocarbon. And we also need to include the number of the carbon that they're attached to. Now, if we've got a chlorine attached to the hydrocarbon, we are then calling it chloro. If it's a fluorine, it's fluoro. If it's a bromine, it's bromo. And if it's an iodine, it's iodo. Again, these are just names you're going to have to learn. Most of them are fairly self-explanatory. You can see where we've got our chlorine, we've removed the ene and it's just added an O. Fluorine, it's added the same. Bromine, we get rid of the ene, add an O. Same with iodine. So when we allocate numbers to the halogens, the overall combination of those numbers must also be as low as possible. So if I was to look at this example below, 2,2-dibromo, 3-chloro, is a lower combination than 3,3-dibromo, 2-chloro. So we need to keep that in mind, and practice will make perfect. But that's not all. We also have to put the halogen branches in alphabetical order. But when we do the alphabetical order, we're not including the di or the tri or the tetra. We're just basing the alphabetical order on whether they're ethyl or methyl. Sounds difficult? We'll see how we go. It's not as bad once you get started. Let's have a go and we'll see how we go working together. So we'll start with a simple one first. So here we have an alkane. Again, our first step is always to name our carbon chain first. So you can see here we have got a 4-carbon chain coming across the center. So that's immediately telling us it's butane. Let's look and see what else we've got. We've got no other alkyl groups. That's great, something less to deal with. But we do have 1 bromo here, or 1 bromine here, and 2 chlorines here. So we have got bromo, drop the ine and put the O. We've got bromo here attached to our carbon number 1. Here we've got 2 chlorines, so it's going to be our dichloro, because there's 2, and it's attached to number 2. But there's 2 of them, so it's 2, 2 for that one. So now let's go and name. And you can see here, sometimes it is easier just to break it down into the bits and then put it all together at the end. So let's put it together. We've got a 1-bromo, 2,2-dichlorobutane. Again, notice this word here is all one word, no gaps, which is why it's often better to put our pieces down and then rewrite the answer as one so that we don't have any issues there and it's not confusing to the marker. So have a look at the next one. Here, again, we're going to name our main chain first, and you'll notice here I've actually put one form of butene in the question and one down in the answer, which again just shows old school, new school. Name the hydrocarbon. I would stick with but-1-ene. So we've got butene there and it's attached to the 1 carbon, so but-1-ene. And then we've got a chloro. Now, remember we have already named our butene by the carbon it's attached to, which is here, which is 1. That means now we do our counting from this side. So our chloro is attached to the third carbon there. So it's 3-chloro. So 3-chloro dash but-1-ene. So how are you going? Do you think you're up for one on your own? Let's see. Have a look at this one. Again, not too complex. So remember your steps. Find your main chain. How many carbons has it got? Write down the main chain. Now let's have a look at what our halogens are there. So we've got a fluorine, so a fluoro, a bromine, bromo, chlorine, chloro. So we're really wanting alphabetical order. Which one's going to be first? What carbon number is it on? Have a go. We'll pause the video and come back and see how you go. Okay, well this one was a bit of a mouthful. We've got the 3 carbon chain, so we've got propane. We're looking at bromo here. So bromo is our lowest in alphabetical order and it's attached to carbon chain or carbon number 1. So we're going to have 1-bromo. Then we've got our chlorine next and it's attached to 1 and 2. So it'll then be 1,2-dichloro. Then we've got fluorine attached to the 2 as well, so it'll be 2-fluoropropane. How'd you go? Practice many more of these over the next lesson or so.